I'm going to go over the render guide and then I'm going to talk about Vulkan. So here's the render guide, and you can find it under rendering render guide. Of course, you can put it in your quick access or find it by right-clicking here also. And this is great for newer people or those who maybe don't want to know every function in the UI and VRED. It's kind of an all-in-one shop here for getting a quick render out. So looking at the layout of this module, like the other modules, we have the split screen and we have the slider to change the thumbnails. And we have up here, this button is a toggle that shows and hides the top and bottom menus. And this one is just a quick pull down for different ratios for your render view. Now I like this. As a seasoned VRED user, I probably wouldn't use a lot in here, but I do like that you can do this split screen and you can split it into 4, or you can choose to close some of these and have 3 or 2 if you want to, for example. The helper will hide, it's kind of hiding here, but it hides the view cube and the home button and this functionality here. So if you want to hide those, you can just do this 4th icon here. And this last icon is a toggle to turn on and off whichever guidelines you might have selected, which can help you set up your framing and composition. I like to use the one called snapshot frame. That way, if the image size you're going to render is smaller than your render port, then you can see exactly what portion is going to be rendered by looking at the yellow borders. And then looking through here, we have cinematic settings, render settings, camera settings, effects, color grading, and render output. And I'll go over all those briefly. So there's these one-click things in here where you can use these default modes, and then you can, let me make this a little larger so you can see it better. And then you can change some of the things. And for this one, we're in OpenGL. So some of these tone mappers like luminance will work in illuminance, but when you're Vulkan, a couple of them won't, they won't change your tone mapper. So you can try different looks. That has to do with the camera for these. So after that, we've got render settings, and we'll talk about Vulkan in a moment, but you're already familiar with OpenGL, but you could quickly switch to a different renderer. CPU and GPU should look the same. It just depends on what part of your hardware it's accessing. Photon tracing is available. You would choose which renderer you're using here. And then you can change some things like the shadow. There's a few functions for each of these in the bottom area. For camera settings, there's some defaults. And with any of these, you can left click on the number to quickly scroll and change your number. And like for field of view, which is the same thing down here in the bottom right, and it's also in camera settings, it's all in one place. And that controls, the higher the number, the more distorted it will be. But you'll notice that now it's yellow and there's an exclamation point. And all that means is that it has been edited from the default of what that preset originally had. So there's no need to worry. It's not a problem. It's just reminding you that you did make some changes. So depth of field, one thing to note is that you do need anti-aliasing enabled here in the top menu bar. And so if you double click on an area, that part will be in focus. And, so I'll focus on the rear or the front. And then you can change the depth of field f-stop, and the lower the number, the more the effect. So you want to be careful with that. If you overdo it, it might look like a toy car. But it is a nice subtle effect when used wisely. And for any of these, if you want to reset all the settings to default in this particular window you have open, for the tools that are open, you can hit this backwards arrow. And if you want to reset the settings for everything in every window, then it would be reset all. So motion blur, that's one thing as far as workflow I wanted to point out. And like I said, this is a file that has all these components that are live referenced. But if you are going to have something animate, like the wheels, for example, I don't know if you're more organized than some places I worked for, but I never got the wheels all ready to go, without the calipers. The part that's going to rotate. Let me just turn off that depth of field or that motion blur. When I had to regroup these, I lost my live references. So my recommendation would be before file handoff, if you're planning to animate something, then you might want to have the person in Alias group all these appropriately so that they're ready to be animated, because as soon as you start making these major regrouping changes, you're going to lose your live referencing. So like I was saying, there is motion blur, and of course you have to have something animated, and I do, so I'll turn on my timeline, scroll forward to a frame in time where the wheels are rotating, and turn my motion blur on. Again, the lower the number, the greater the effect, and again, you do need anti-aliasing on. So maybe just a subtle effect like 1 in 250, maybe 62, something like that. So these are all here, and I know that the designers will love to play with all these things. There's glow and glare is on this page. And if you want one on, maybe you want glow on, but you want glare off. And for the threshold, the greater the number, the lesser the effect. And if you like any of these and you want to save them, then you can save a viewpoint and it will be saved, a lot of these settings that you're affecting through the render guide. And I was thinking like, if you're going to show a designer some variations of the same thing and you want to know which direction they choose, it'd be really cool to have a comparison. And then I figured out, like, this is how you can do it. And this might be beyond some of the novice users, but what you could do is in your camera editor, what I did was I just duplicated my perspective camera so that I have 4 of them identical, and for each I duplicated my viewpoint. And let me just open these up. I duplicated my viewpoint so they're all identical, and then I just name them. So you always have to click in the window you want to go to your saved viewpoint. So this would be top right, so I'll click on that viewpoint. This would be top left, that viewpoint. This would be bottom left and bottom right. And then of course you could make some subtle changes and see what you like best working this way, and you could always make some changes in your render guide. Say for this one, I want to add chromatic aberration, which is a new feature, and that is like has to do with physical cameras and how they distort things and put like a rainbow on the edge of it, and then you can maybe, let me exaggerate the effect. Let's see. The distortion, you can see the distortion you can change in X, Y, and Z. So say I got that just right. Maybe I wanted glow on. And then I had it just like I liked it. Then I could just go to my top right viewpoint and say edit, set to current view, and that will overwrite. So now whatever I change, whatever, if I don't want to lose it, I can just go back to my viewpoint and everything's saved there. Yeah, so I was starting to talk about these different effects, and then for any of these, the weight is, you can combine it from, no effect to any percentage of how much you want to add that for these filters. And now when you're going to render, there's a few things that I'll pass on that I noticed, hopefully will save you time because it wasn't obvious. So for the custom, before, if you're really familiar with VRED, you might know that you'd have to go and set that up in user preferences. But for this custom, and by the way, if you hit its Control-Enter, it undocks any of these windows. It's going to listen to the dimensions of the window you have active, and the active window has this black border. So if I drag this to an unusual size, right now you can't type it in, but you can see the pixel dimensions on top. And then you say use current window size, that's what it's going to listen to. But otherwise, you could just go to any of these presets, and these are either in 16:9 ratios, 4:3, or 16:8:3 ratios. You'll want to match that to your render window size where they do have it after. To get what you see, you want to match these for the framing and the composition. Another unobvious thing to some new users, but you seasoned users will already know, that if you want to export alpha channel, and which means just to have a cutout of the car, there you can really see the chromatic aberration now. It's going to also consider that the dome is a geometry, so unless you go and you hide the dome, now it's going to render just the alpha of the car. So like if you were in Photoshop, it would have that checkerboard background and the environment, or, outside of the car. So that's just one extra step that new people might not be expecting, that you do need to hide that dome, or the alpha is not going to work. And I think it only works with PNG and TIFF, if I recall right. So when you're ready to go, turn animation on off, render here. It'll give you a window to tell it where to save to, same as always. So kind of nice that everything's all in one, for some of the people who maybe aren't in VRED all the time or as proficient. And again, it's Control-Enter to redock those windows. And like I said, you could delete some of them and have this sort of two screens, so you could do a side-by-side comparison like this. I think that'd be good for doing live reviews. And then you could also set up your viewpoint. If you need to add a new window, it's under Window, New Render. So I can add those two back in that I lost and be back to ground zero.